Greetings, space travelers, and welcome to another video. You might have thought we were retiring the astronaut helmet, but when I stick to a theme, I stick to it. And we have a brand new release today that's completely space themed with Ranger. So that means brand new space stamps, as well as coordinating dies, and some fun new Astro Pastes, which all of you have been requesting a ton. Now before we get started, a little bit of space housekeeping today. Some of the designs in this release are licensed artwork, which means some talented designers created the artwork, and we brought it together into a stamp set that makes it perfect for card making. I know my strengths, and I'm not the best at drawing, so sometimes it helps when a talented artist is able to design it, and then we're able to create some amazing cards with it. It helps get lots of different styles in the artwork and give you even more options to choose from when you're crafting. Now remember, everything that I use in today's video is listed and linked down below, and using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. I can't wait to dive into this release together and explore the brand new space designs as well as the new Astro Pastes and create some cards using them. Now without further ado, let's get into it. And although this helmet's fun, I definitely don't think I can craft with it the whole video, so I'm gonna set it off to the side, but it might make another cameo later on. So let's start off by talking about the 4 brand new colors of Astro Paste. Now before we dive into the new colors, I wanted to of course cover Astro Paste in case if you haven't used it before. Astro Paste launched in 2024 with 9 different colors. 8 of them are opaque glitter colors that are really bright and stunning and match colors from the Hurley Create line. And then you have Frostbite, which is a clear glitter, which is hard to see on this white cardstock, but it kind of gives a frosted, shiny look. And this you can put over top of inks, and it's the only one that's really translucent from the line. Now all these have a translucent base to them, so they are a see-through base, but the glitter is what makes them opaque. So if you apply them thinner, you can see through them a little bit more, which is a really fun part about the Astro Paste, and I'll share more about that later in today's video. So of course, these 9 colors are gorgeous, but all of you guys have been asking and begging for some metallic colors. So of course, we listened to you guys and are launching 4 brand new beautiful colors of Astro Paste. These colors are Cookie Dough, Fool's Gold, which Fool's Gold is a brand new color in any of the paste lines. We've never had this color gold. Refined Copper, and lastly, Silver Lining. These colors are absolutely gorgeous, and I think you're gonna have so much fun with them. Now, if you look in these jars, the color of the actual paste itself is kind of a frosty paste. Like I said, the base of the paste is actually translucent, but when it's in the jar like this, it doesn't look translucent. And that's because I wanted the formula to be exactly the same as Lunar and Solar Paste. And sometimes when you have a formula that looks more clear, it can be more jello-y and kind of sticky and not as nice. So this formula starts like this because I wanted it to have that same creamy consistency as Lunar and Solar Paste, but it will dry clear. And it actually dries to be the colors that you see the Astro Paste written in on the labels. So if you look at the label, you can see that beautiful metallic color. That's how these are going to dry down, so we did that strategically by giving it those colored labels. But of course, I always recommend swatching out your products as soon as you get them. That way you have a reference and you can easily reference that when you're trying to create your cards and know what they're going to look like on your finished project once they're dry. And I mean, check that out. These metallic colors are so incredibly gorgeous. I can't wait to see what you guys do with them. They are just beautiful and so bold and shiny. And then look at this. When you look at them on the black cardstock, like I told you, they are opaque when applied thick like that, so you can really see how beautiful. They don't lose any of that color or sparkle or shine on that black cardstock, which is so fun. Now you can see though, when it is applied thinner like that, you can see through to the black cardstock, so you still can thin it out with that clear base and get a little bit less glitter on top and still see through to what's below. So let's walk through the colors a little bit more. Cookie Dough is of course that really great warm neutral metallic. It's almost like a pearl color, but it's got a little bit more warmth than a pearl might have to it. Then we have Fool's Gold, which is this brand new gold color. It's completely different than the other gold that we have in the line. To compare to what we've been using, which is Slippery and Wet, that's more of a yellow gold. You can really see the kind of yellow mustard color in there. I'm not even sure if the camera's picking it up, but it is really yellow. Whereas Fool's Gold still has a little bit of yellow to it, but it's more of kind of a neutralized yellow. It's not as much of a yellow as Slippery and Wet is, where this is more of like a bright mustardy kind of color. Fool's Gold is just a really beautiful and elegant gold color. Then we have Refined Copper, which is this gorgeous copper color. I absolutely love it. Check out that sparkle that it has. And it just is that really beautiful kind of penny color. It is absolutely stunning. And then we have silver lining over here, which is the perfect silver. So many of you guys were begging for a silver because we already did have a little bit of a gold with that mustardy color, but now we have like the perfect line of neutrals. Whether you're looking for kind of a pearly color or any of the metallics, these are going to suit you so well when you're creating with your sparkly glitter. I'm gonna just show all these colors under my iPhone camera too. Sometimes my film camera can be a little bit weird with colors, so I thought I'd show you in both cameras just to make sure you get a realistic look as to what these colors look like. And I do want to note, my favorite part about these pastes is that once they're dried on your project, you're not getting any of that glitter falling off or on your recipient's hand, because let me be honest, I love how glitter looks, I love that sparkle and shine, but I hate, more than anything, and I know hate's a strong word, but I'm gonna use it here because I hate when glitter gets all over the place. And once this is dry and set into place, it's not gonna get on your recipient's hand, it's not gonna be all over the envelope and all over their clothing, it stays on your project, which is amazing. So Astro Paste is of course beautiful if you want all of that sparkle and shine, but I do get tons of questions on what the difference is between Lunar Paste, Astro Paste, and Solar Paste. And because the Lunar Paste has metallics as well, I want to explain the difference between them. So in the Lunar Paste line, we have 5 of what I would consider kind of metallic colors. Some of them match the exact colors that we have in Astro Paste, and some of them are a little bit different. But Lunar Paste is going to give you more of kind of a mica metallic shine rather than an actual sparkle where you can see all those individual pieces of glitter. So this actually gives you more of like a metal smooth finish, which is really beautiful. Here we have Cookie Dough, then we have Gold Rush. Now Gold Rush is a little bit different than Fool's Gold. It's a little bit more of kind of an antique gold, whereas Fool's Gold is more of kind of a pure lighter gold color. So it just depends on what you want. We don't have Gold Rush in the Astro Pastes, but Gold Rush is available in the Lunar Paste. So it'll just give you a little bit of a different look. Then we have Refined Copper, which is that same beautiful copper color, and Silver Lining, which is that gorgeous silver. And then of course in the Lunar Paste, we also have Shady, which is this kind of darker gunmetal metallic color, and that's absolutely gorgeous as well. But again, these are going to give you a much more smooth metallic mica shine to them. And then on black cardstock, they are really opaque as well, so it's not going to affect the color at all, and you're going to still see that same beautiful vibrance in the color on white or black cardstock. And I thought I'd also bring in Slippery When Wet, since some people consider this kind of a gold metallic color. That's why we don't have like a Fool's Gold in the Lunar Paste, because if you want more of like a gold color, Slippery When Wet is perfect for that in the Lunar Paste. And if you want more of a darker antique gold, that's where Gold Rush comes in. So some people consider this just a basic as well, so I thought I'd show the swatches there of that, but you can really see it's a much different yellowy kind of color compared to the Astro Paste. So this Fool's Gold was definitely needed, and it's absolutely beautiful. So I just thought I would show that comparison because a lot of people kind of ask what the differences are. If you ask me, I think you need a little bit of both. They give you 2 completely different looks, and they can do very different effects on your card making projects. All right, then let's talk a little bit more about the consistency of these pastes. I'm going to put my stark white cardstock right down onto my glass mat here. Then I'm going to go in with one of my stencils. This one is called Deco Diamonds, and it has a lot of surface area that we can apply this paste to, so it's great. And I love this stencil design too. It gives kind of a really regal deco art kind of look. So I'll just take some mint tape to hold down my stencil in place while we do our background. All right, so if you haven't used the Astro Paste before, let me show you how it works. The Astro Paste is a really nice, smooth, and creamy paste. Now, of course, I've already used a little bit in here, but it comes with 2 ounces in the jar, and it's really creamy and has a nice texture to it. But I will say it's not too thin. I've seen some pastes where they're a little bit kind of runny, and then it runs underneath the stencil. This is just thin enough to kind of spread and smooth through the stencil without it going underneath. It's almost like whipped kind of butter. It's really great, and it goes through that stencil nice and smooth. So you can of course smooth it down with a palette knife like that. It's really easy to do. Or you can take a lot of the paste, and I'm using my paste tool set here. So I'm starting off with the palette knife. And then inside of the paste tool set, you also get 2 scrapers included. And I love these things because I just add the paste up at the top here, and then I'm able to scrape the paste all the way down. And again, it's nice and smooth and creamy, so it goes down all the way. Now some people, when they're using this paste tool set, they just keep it at the same angle and keep trying to scrape and kind of work it in, and it doesn't get all throughout the stencil, and you might get a little bit annoyed. But there is a technique that you should do when you're using this that makes it a lot easier. and that is there's still a lot of paste at the edge of this scraper. What you need to do is, instead of having it at an upward angle like this, tilt it more downward. That's going to deposit more of that paste that's on the tool. And then once you've got the stencil fully covered, then you can go at more of this upright angle and lightly scrape it all off. And that's going to smooth and even out the whole layer of paste. So that's my biggest tip when using this paste tool set. Upward motion when you're trying to smooth and scrape paste off, and downward kind of motion sort of parallel to the cardstock when you're trying to apply more of that paste down on the surface. The reason why I told you can apply as much paste as you want is because then you can take your palette knife from that paste tool set and put any of the excess right back into the jar. Easy as can be. And then you can seal this right off. All right, then let's lift off the stencil and check out how gorgeous that design is. Now this is where I talked about how the thickness of that paste really matters. Like I said, it's just buttery and smooth enough to scrape through that stencil super easily, but it's not too runny. So notice how all these edges are completely sharp, nothing went underneath the stencil, and that's because the Astro paste is that perfect consistency where it's still thick enough that it's not going to seep underneath that stencil. Now every once in a while it does seep underneath the stencil, and I would say that's more of a user error, because you just want to be smooth and gentle when you're applying it down to the surface. Too many times, and I'm even guilty of this too, when I see it went underneath someone's stencil, you really see them like working and pushing it underneath that stencil. And the more you kind of press down with a ton of pressure as you're using the scraper tool, that's when you're gonna kind of force it underneath the stencil. But if you're just gentle with it and you're just lightly scraping across the surface, you should have no worries about it seeping underneath, as long as you had everything taped and secured down nicely. All right, then just make sure to clean off your stencils right away. I'm gonna go in here with a little bit of water and just scrape everything off with a paper towel. You can also bring this underneath a sink and easily wipe it off, and that's gonna be the best way to get everything nice and clean. I also love working on this glass mat from Glassboard Studios. I'll have it linked down below. This has been a game changer to keep my surface clean as I'm working with any sort of pastes or mediums. Now with dry time for these pastes, it all depends on your climate. If you apply the paste really thin with your finger, which I'll show you later on in the video, it dries almost instantly. That's one of my favorite ways to use these pastes. But if you apply it a little bit thicker like this, it can take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on your climate, for it to dry. However, here's a little life hack. Lunar, Solar, and Astro pastes can all be heated. And that's because I told the chemist that as we were making these, I needed them to be heat stable because I'm an impatient crafter. So I just go in with my heat tool here. I like this one from Ranger because the heat is more dispersed. It's not as focused. So you're not going to just kind of boil these pastes down. You do still want to be careful and keep the heat tool moving. If you just leave it focused in one area with lots of heat, it could still have the possibility of bubbling. But as long as you keep your heat tool moving across the surface, this can really help aid in the drying process and make it take 1 to 3 minutes to dry with the heat tool on it. I really like this about it because then you're able to dry it and move on to the next step very easily without having to set it off to the side and wait for it to dry if you're impatient like me. So here's a look at that refined copper color once it's dry. Check out how absolutely gorgeous this is. I'm not even sure if the camera is really doing it justice there. But all of that shine comes back to it, and it is the most gorgeous copper color. So don't be fooled by just applying it on the surface with it kind of having that milky consistency. All of that will go away once it's dry, and you can see all of that amazing glitter and shine and beautiful vibrant color that it has. I'm just gonna film it with my iPhone camera too, just so you can get more of a realistic look as to what that color looks like. Sometimes my camera's a little bit off, but it is gorgeous. Now before we move on to the rest of the video with the space themed card making, let me very quickly show you some basic Astro paste techniques that you can do so you get a feel for what they can do rather than just applying it onto the cardstock through a stencil. I'm gonna start off this technique with an ink blended background, so I'm going in with some of my Simon Hurley Create inks onto my stark white cardstock, and I'm just going to blend some color. Starting off here with a little bit of Crown Me, I'm going to blend this beautiful purple color right down. Then I'll bring in some No Diving, which is this nice saturated mid-tone blue color, and I'll blend that into the purple, and check out how beautifully and seamlessly these ink colors blend. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then lastly, let's do a little bit of Prom Queen, which is this nice bright hot pink color, and I'll blend that right into No Diving. And again, you can see these colors blend together beautifully and really just effortlessly. And I'm just doing this for a simple blend that we can add paste over top of. Now Valentine's Day just happened, so let's go in with a heart stencil. This is called Happy Hearts. I think this is great for all year round if you just want a great basic heart stencil. It is a layering stencil, but you can use some of these on their own as well. I'm gonna use layer number 1 by itself, which has these bigger hearts, and lay that down right over top of my card. Now for this, I think I'll go in with Silver Lining, which is this gorgeous silver color, and I wanted to show you how to use Astro Paste in a much thinner way where you still want to see through it. Because like I said, these are opaque if you apply them thick, but the base is still clear of the paste. So really the only opaque part of it is all the glitter that you're applying. So if you want it to be clearer, you're just going to apply less of it onto your project. So I'm just gonna go in with my finger. A very little bit goes a long way, so you can even use less than you'd think. And you're just going to lightly tap on the surface over top of this stencil. And you can see as the glitter is getting applied, and you can kind of add more glitter or less glitter. The less you add, the more you're still gonna be able to see underneath for that color of ink. So I'm just going to lightly tap across this stencil all over that background. I find that with this technique, you don't want to kind of rub because you're just pushing that glitter around, as you can see on my craft mat there. But if you tap, you're more just like applying a little bit of that glitter and kind of getting rid of some of that liquid base that's in there and just applying lots of glitter down to the surface. Whereas if you push it around, you're just moving it around on the surface. This just kind of applies it down and keeps it in that same spot by just tapping it into place. So it's a little bit different than applying like a lunar or solar paste, but once you get used to it, it's really easy to do. Then we'll lift this off the surface and check that out. You now have gorgeous hearts all over, and you can really see that sparkle from all of those little flecks of glitter all over that background. Again, just go in here and clean off everything as quickly as possible. I like to clean my stencils right away. You can also bring this underneath a sink if you want to get rid of all that glitter, which I'm gonna go do. A trip to the sink and all of that glitter washes off perfectly. Super easy to do. You could also have a little bin of water nearby and just set all your stencils down while you're working. That way the paste doesn't kind of stay dry on them, and then you can bring them to the sink afterwards if you don't have a sink close by. The awesome part about applying paste so thin in this way is that they dry in seconds. So by the time that I came back from cleaning, all of that is dry, it's not coming off on my hands, and it's staying perfectly on my project. And what's so cool about this too is when you're looking at it straight on, you can barely tell that there's any glitter there. You can see a faint little bit of that glitter, but then once you tilt it in the light, all of that really sparkles and shines and comes to life. Now, but because we applied it so thin, you can still see that blue, purple, and pink behind it, which I think is so cool. It didn't fully cover it up with the glitter, but then it shines once you tilt it in the light. And here's another example of that. I did a rainbow blend of Simon Hurley Create inks on my cardstock, and then I put cookie dough, fool's gold, refined copper, and silver lining over top. This is when they are nice and thick like this, and check out all of that gorgeous sparkle and shine. And you can't see the colors below it, but then I did that same technique with that rainbow ink blend, and check this out. When you're looking straight on, you can still see most of that color underneath, and then when you tilt it in the light, you can see all that sparkle and shine there. So fun and so absolutely beautiful. You can even see, since it's kind of that lighter, pearlier color, some of that color from underneath got seeped up into it, and it turned into more of kind of a pinky color here. Because the Simon Hurley ink is water reactive, and there's liquid inside of the paste, so it kind of seeped up that color, which I thought was kind of cool. And because of that, where it kind of seeped up the ink, I thought, what if I actually tried to dye it myself? So I'm gonna go in with a little bit of cookie dough and use some Love Struck ink from my Simon Hurley line. Again, I'm going to smoosh this right down onto my glass craft sheet. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of that cookie dough Astro Paste and blend it together. Now, if you used a normal lunar paste here, of course, it would color the lunar paste, but it wouldn't necessarily color the mica itself. So you would still have that kind of white hazy shine with a colored base in the paste. And the same thing is going to happen here. You'd think this is like coloring all of that paste, right? Because you can see that it's much redder on my palette knife here. And let me put this on a piece of black cardstock just to show you, so you can still see it's that gorgeous kind of red paste there. I think that's absolutely beautiful. All right, and here is that swatch once it's dry. And I wanted to show you this on black cardstock because I thought it was super important to understand that when you're coloring the paste, you're actually coloring the base of the paste. So in this instance, you're coloring the clear base of the paste with that clear re-inker. And so on a black or opaque colored cardstock, you can still see some of that light pink tinge, but it really loses that red color because it starts seeping into that cardstock and becoming more translucent. Now you can still see a really light pink haze over top of the paste here, but what you have to understand is that the glitter, which is plastic, isn't going to dye itself with that re-inker. So when you tilt it in the light, you're still gonna see all of that white shine or kind of pearly looking shine from cookie dough. And then that really subtle light pink haze because it's sitting over top of that glitter, which is opaque. So you're still getting a tiny bit of pink, but you're not getting that color opacity that you really want. But I thought it was still cool to kind of show this technique that if you want to lightly dye the colors, you totally can. What I think is cool about this is when you dye a color and you put it on a white cardstock, because then you're actually coloring that whole base, and that base stays colorful because it's on a white cardstock, which allows that color to shine through. Now, of course, in this instance, you're still only coloring the base. So when you tilt it in the light, you're still getting that really cool cookie dough shine, but this is a cool way to get kind of like a red paste with that cookie dough glitter in it. Or color any of the metallic paste with a sort of color underneath. You're getting a colored base of the paste with whatever metallic color you put in it, which I think could be really cool. Thought that was a cool thing to show, especially with metallics now being in the line. You can color them whatever color you want to, and then have that really cool metallic color shine through because that glitter itself doesn't dye a specific color. That's why it's important if you actually want the vibrancy and the different colors of glitter. Each one of these are colors of glitter. They're not dyed any specific color. So that's why I love the Astro Paste, because they're really bright in that color because those glitter particles are actually that color, which is so cool. Now lastly, I want to try mixing pastes together. So let's do a little bit of the silver lining from both the Lunar and Astro Paste line. Bit of that Lunar paste, put it right onto my glass craft sheet, and then I'll bring in a little bit of that Astro paste and mix it in. I'll bring in even a little bit more than that. And then we'll mix those in together nicely so that we can combine them into kind of a glittery and metallic paste in one. This could either be really cool or it could just cover up the glitter in the Astro paste, and I'm excited to see what it does. All right, now let's just do my trusty Deco diamond stencil. I'm going to pick up this silver lining mix of the Lunar and Astro paste together and start putting it right through my stencil. Oh my gosh, I can already see some of that glitter still shining through. I didn't know because the Lunar paste is opaque, so I thought it could possibly cover it up, but it's still really cool when you apply it like this. All right, then let's lift it off, and even kind of haphazardly putting it through that stencil, it still didn't seep through. And check out how cool this is. Once these dry, you get all of that awesome texture from the glitter, but you also get that sparkle and shine in there. So of course you're getting this mica metallic shine from the Lunar paste, but I don't know if it's even catching on camera. You get this beautiful little kind of twinkling, shining sparkle from the Astro paste. And I'll film it with my iPhone too so you can get a more detailed look. But there's kind of a little bit of a sparkle in there, which I think is so fun. Of course it's silver on silver, so you might not be able to see it as much here. But what's awesome is with these metallics, you can put any of the metallic Astro paste into any color of Lunar paste too, and have the metallic really pop through any of the Lunar paste colors. And here I used less Astro paste compared to how much Lunar paste I used, but if you do a more equal ratio, you'll probably see even more of the Astro paste sparkling through. All right, hold on guys, I'm getting a call on my headset here. What's that?
Simon, there's a lot to cover and you've only talked about Astro Paste.
The space travelers are getting bored?
They're picky people.
Huh, okay. I'll talk a little less. We're gonna move on. All right, travelers, boss told me I was getting a little bit too boring here, so we're moving on to the next products. We're gonna talk a little bit about all of my space-themed stamps, which are so much fun, and these designs are out of this world. See what I did there? Little pun.
Hear that, Simon? Crickets. Nobody's laughing.
Wow, tough crowd today, huh? Starting off, let's talk about the Space Friend stamp set. This is a clear 6x9" photopolymer stamp set that's high quality, made in the US photopolymer, so you know it's going to stamp beautifully. And there are so many fun images inside of this set. Up in this half, you have some more playful animal images, so like these two little dogs and all of these adorable little floating kitties with their astronaut helmets on. I think those are so adorable, so if you're into little critters, that's definitely up your alley. And then on the bottom half of this stamp set, we have more kind of space-themed products that aren't as playful and funny as little animals in space. So you have some different rocket ships, as well as a UFO, different planets that are inside of here, and the moon, and a little astronaut. And I mean, how adorable is this little alien in the set too? I love how many images we were able to pack in, so you can really create lots of different scenes. And then of course, some great sentiments, like I love you to the moon and back, floating by to say hi, you are out of this world amazing, shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars, blast off, cheers to another trip around the sun, happy birthday, and you're a star. Some great sentiments that cover lots of different occasions with this stamp set. You can really use it for lots of different things, and I love that kind of space typewriter font that it's in. It really fits the theme of this set beautifully. Now, of course, there is a coordinating die set that's available to cut all of the images inside of this set out, which is really awesome. These dies are made by Spellbinders, so you know they're super high quality, and all the dies will arrive to you already separated like this, so there's no need to go in and clip any of the dies out, which is really awesome because frankly that's quite dangerous to do in your craft room and super time consuming. So I love that it's already done for you, so all you need to do is get right into crafting and you don't need to work with any sharp tools. Now the dies will come in packaging that looks a little bit more like this, but I decided to put them on a magnetic sheet. This is a magnet sheet from Stampin' Storage. It's got kind of a piece of chipboard in the back, so it makes it much sturdier and none of these dies are going to fall off, which I really appreciate about it. I'll link down below to the magnet cards that I used, but they're not too thick, so I'm still able to bend it just slightly and get the die off if I need to work with it, and then put it right back onto the storage. Makes things really easy and super quick to store, and these Stampin' Storage magnet cards are definitely my favorites. And speaking of storage, for my stamps and dies, I've been using these Altenew storage pockets. These are the 10 3/4 inches by 7.5 inches. They're really great pockets because it's super thick plastic and kind of like welded together edges like this, which makes them super sturdy, and I think they're gonna last a long time. So I just take my stamp set and backer sheet and slide it right in the front. And then I'm able to take the die set on that magnet card and store it right in the back of that stamp pocket. And I love so much that the Altenew pocket fits both of these sets inside of one pocket. So it's really easy, and it's that nice thick plastic, so I don't think that it's going to rip the sides of it by storing this much in there. So I've really been enjoying these pockets. And then all you do to close it is take this little flap and place it in that little cutout slit. And it's nice and sealed for your storage. So I'll link down below these pockets. Not many pockets fit my stamp sets because 6x9 is a lot larger than most stamp companies do, so I really like these pockets. Next we have the 6x6 rubber stamp set called Planetary, and I am obsessed with this set. So it has all the different planets and the sun and the moon in this set, and I tried to make them as accurate in size as I could in relation to one another. I did my research on that, but don't get mad at me if they're a little bit off because I still wanted to make them, reasonable to work on a card, so I didn't want any that were too small. And the really cool part about this is the artist that did this did it with a bunch of little stippled dots all over the design. So what you're actually seeing is an image that's made up of a bunch of dots, and where the dots get really close together, it gets a lot darker, and where they're farther apart, it gets a lot lighter. So when you stamp these images, you're gonna get all of that natural shading in these, so you don't really need to do much coloring with them because they already kind of color themselves in once you stamp them down onto the surface. I think they are such cool images. And the reason why this stamp set's rubber is because all those dots is really only possible with a red rubber stamp. Check out the insane detail and quality that these red rubber stamps have. It is so amazing, and you just know that it's going to stamp beautifully every single time. And then at the bottom of the set, we have a strip of stars like this. I love these little stars. They're great for creating backgrounds if you want to repeat the image all the way across the background, which is super easy to do with this stamp strip. But then also you can take little bits and pieces and just use it to kind of collage or add texture to your background. So I'm really obsessed with that we included that image in the set and that we didn't make it the whole background stamp, because in reality, like I said, you could repeat this. But I love that we added it in as a strip, so it gives you more value that we filled the rest of the set in with a bunch of planets. So I love the value that's packed in this set. There's so many images on the 6x6 stamp set, and I think you guys are going to have tons of fun with these beautiful stamped planets. I did want to mention with these rubber stamp sets, they actually have a thicker piece of acetate in them, because my idea for you guys is just to kind of keep these stored on this plastic sheet. It's much thicker, so your stamps aren't going to fall off if you move them around like this. Of course, you can put it in a pocket if you want to, but this makes storage a lot easier for you guys, that it already comes with this nice thick sheet. And I just want to demonstrate one of these guys to you. So these are cling rubber stamps. If you haven't used them before, you peel them off the backer sheet and then you'll put them onto an acrylic block. This is one of my Simon Hurley acrylic blocks. It actually comes in a pack of 2, so you have kind of a smaller, longer one that I usually use for sentiments, and then this larger one fits most of the stamp images from my line. And we also have a much larger one for strips of background stamps like those stars, or also if your image gets a little bit too big, this is a great block as well. This is not an acrylic block promo, but I do love these because of the thickness too. They're easy to grab onto, but they're not too thin or too thick that they're gonna fall out of your hands. All right, then let's talk about stamping. I'm gonna start off with a little bit of yellow ink. This one is called Slippery When Wet, and I'm going to just ink up this stamp. Then I'm going to go in with some other colors from my line. So I'm gonna use a little bit of Prom Queen, and I'm just going to take this ink and kind of roll it onto the surface like this. So I'm just going to roll it onto that stamp to kind of blend it together with that yellow and add a little bit of shading and dimension with my color. You'll notice that I started with the lightest color and I'm going to work my way into a darker color. So I'm going to work my way to Bee Sting and just kind of lightly tap the edge of the stamp with this. Don't worry too much about contaminating your ink pads. If you want to wipe off the surface, you totally can to get rid of some of that yellow. But in reality, it's not going to contaminate any one of your pads unless you start with a super dark color and then work your way to yellow. That I'd be more careful of. Then I'll bring in my stark white cardstock and let me show you how beautiful this is when you stamp it down onto your surface. So I'll press that down and check that out. You get that beautiful stamping with tons of shading inside the image, so it's much darker around the edge, and then it has all of those little tiny dots that you can see in that stamped image that make up that really great detailed planet image. I think it's so cool, and this would be a great focal point, or you can use all those planets to build out a background. I'm obsessed with those stamps that are made up of a bunch of little dots. It creates beautiful stamping without having to color the image in if you don't want to. Then you lift it off of the acrylic block, and then you can put it right back onto the stamp sheet for storage. Super easy to do, and I love how red rubber stamps. It's such great quality and such crisp images. All right, so now let's get into creating our first card. For this one, I'm gonna start off with the stars strip from the planetary stamp set and peel this right off. Now with this stamp, you can kind of use it with your fingers and just press parts and pieces of the stamp if you want to add texture to a background. But if you want to stamp the whole thing fully, I recommend using an acrylic block, and that's where this large acrylic block from my line comes in. I like this one because you can stick down pieces and strips of background stamps and really easily stamp them. Now for this first technique, we're gonna do a little bit of embossing. So I'm gonna go onto my Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock. I'm using a pre-cut card panel here, and I'm just going to put some anti-static powder tool all the way across to make sure no embossing powder gets where we don't want it to. Then I'm gonna go in onto my stamp with a little bit of embossing ink. Here I'm using a little bit of Versamark ink, and I'm going to ink up that strip of stars. Then we'll turn this cardstock, and I'm just going to stamp this strip the long way down my cardstock like this. So easily stamp that. Now you're not gonna be able to see where it is on the white cardstock, so in order to kind of layer this and keep my stamping going, I'm gonna take my clear or white embossing powder. Anyone will work here because we're on white cardstock. I'm using clear. And I'm going to put it on and tap off the excess. That way you're able to see where those stars are stamped and we can continue our stamping. So I want there to be a full background of stars, not just a strip or a few of them. So I'm gonna go back in and ink that up. And then I'm going to kind of fit this stamp right in between there and stamp down that next strip. Then again, I'll bring in my clear embossing powder, throw over my next layer, and tap off any of the excess. And we're really starting to build up our background here. And then one more time, I'll go in with my Versamark sticky ink and then stamp it right down. Perfect. And there we go. That looks amazing. We have stars all over the background. And even if it's not perfect, it doesn't really matter because the star pattern is so sporadic and random. They're not gonna know if it overlaps a little bit or anything. It doesn't need to be exact. All right, then I'm going in with my heat tool and I'm going to heat set that embossing powder until it's clear and shiny. Once that background is embossed, we're gonna go in and do our ink blending. So for this, I'm going to lay down my grippy mat. This is from Altenew and I really like it because it holds my cardstock perfectly in place while I do my ink blending. So I'll lay that down so it doesn't move. And then we can start our blending, and I'm gonna show you the perfect color combination for a galaxy background. This is at least my favorite. You can switch it up a little bit if you want to, but I love these colors together. So I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Crown Me to start off with, and I'm using my domed foam blending tools, and I'm just going to add some color in from like 3 areas on the background. I find that working in rules of 3 is kind of really pleasing to the eye, so I'll just add color in areas 3 times across the card. And I'm kind of fading the edges out into that white color. And you can really see that these stars really start shining through because that embossing powder is going to act as a plastic resist and it won't take any of the ink. So it leaves them nice and bright white. Then I'll bring in a little bit of Midnight Snack, which is this dark navy color. This color is essential to creating a nice nighttime sky. And I'm going to blend this together and overlap it with that purple beautifully. And I mean, those colors blend together just gorgeous and make make such a beautiful background already. I love these colors. And again, I'll add it in 3 different areas on the card. Then we want to bring in a little bit of lighter color. So here I'm going in with No Diving, which is this kind of mid-tone blue. It's going to brighten up that background a little bit. And I'm again going to just add this in a couple different areas on the background. Now you could keep it super dark like this, but I like to add a little bit more lighter color, so I'll bring in a little bit of clear skies and kind of fill in some other smaller areas on the background. And then last but not least, this might be a little controversial, but I like a little bit of yellowy green in the background. It gives a little bit of kind of a space glow. If you don't want to, you can skip it and just stick with these blues and purples, but Psych is such a cool color to add to a space background. Don't know why, but I love it. And I'm just going to bring it in here and blend it in with those blues and purples. And I'm telling you, these colors blend like magic. Like that creates a nice darker green in between. And that Psych color adds that kind of lighter greenish chartreuse color. And it is gorgeous. And these inks blend seamlessly too. Like I'm using no effort and these are blending into all those colors just beautifully. I'm loving this. It looks amazing. Okay, so there is our space themed background. I think this is phenomenal. Now, if we want to remove some of that color from those white stars, just go in with a cloth or a paper towel and wipe them off, and you can really see that those stay nice and bright white. All right, now let's talk about adding more depth and dimension to this background, because it's definitely needed. We need a couple more stars and space kind of things shining through on here. And this is where we bring in stencils. Now, this is a stencil set from Spellbinders. It's a 3-piece layering set with stars called Starry Night. And this comes with an embossing folder, so you can blend over top of the embossing folder, but I also like to just use it on a card for a little bit of layering like this. So I'm going to take one of the layers of that stencil and lay it right down onto our card in different sections, and I'm just going to go into certain areas and do more detail work. For this, I'm using an Ultra blending brush that's this small size. The reason why I like the blending brush for this is because there's so many points in these star stencils, and the domed foam doesn't get into all those pointed details. So I like these mini blending brushes for doing pointed, really detailed stars like these. And I'll just go in and fill them in. Now, on this navy area, I'm using that same navy color to blend those stars in, so you get kind of a tone-on-tone look. But whenever you're using any sort of translucent dye-based ink like this, whenever you layer color up on top of each other, even if it's the same color, it becomes a little bit darker every single time. So you're still going to get the look of these stars as you layer them on top of the same exact color that you're using. All right, now I'll use a different section. So maybe this time I'll use this side of the stencil, and I'm gonna go in with Psych, and I'm just going to do that same thing and blend some of these stars down with that bright green color. And that's just going to give a couple bright green stars in the background. Again, keeping it very tone on tone. You can barely see them in some areas, but it definitely helps to build up all these layers. And lastly, we'll go in with a different layer of that star stencil, and we'll go in with Crown Me ink and do a couple of purple stars as well on top of the purple section of the background. Really brings these stars to life and starts adding lots more texture and interest to it. So you got those white stars on the foreground, you got those darker stars in the background. I think it looks awesome. I'm telling you guys, never underestimate a layer. It really is what starts bringing your card to life, and your eyes kind of drawn to all the different layers that you did, really notice all those amazing details, and it starts really bringing lots of dimension to it. Now I think I'm gonna go in with a little bit of cookie dough because it's kind of that neutral pearl color, and I just wanna add a little bit of sparkle and shine into this background. So again, taking the tiniest little bit on my finger, and I'm just going to go in and start dabbing it on, and this is just going to kind of like almost look like little stars in the background, almost like the Milky Way in some different areas, and I'll just bring this gently and tap it all over randomly on the surface of my card, and again, it just brings a little bit of life to that background. And then don't forget about the other colors of Astro Paste too. I'm going in with Crown Me, which is this kind of blue-purple mix of Astro Paste, which I think is so cool. And this color will still shine and give a bunch of glitter, but it just is gonna kind of blend in the background and not stand out as much as like a white or pearl color glitter, like that cookie dough. And I'm just gonna tap this on into some of those blue and purple areas of the background to, again, just add even more layers to the background. And again, when applied so thin, those Astro Pastes dry so quickly, and you're not even really able to see them when you look straight on the card like this, but then when you tilt it in the light, check out all of that amazing glitter. It really brings this card to life and gives it kind of that galaxy feel with even the look of more stars in the background. And the best part, once it's all dry, that glitter is not coming off on your hand at all, which I think is amazing. All right, now that the background is done, let's work on the focal point for this card. So I'm gonna go into the Space Friends stamp set, and there's lots to choose from in here. I'm sure I'm gonna be using these on a ton of space-themed cards. And then I'll go in and stamp out these images using a little bit of VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And I really like this ink because it's a pigment ink that's super crisp and black. So you'll get a really great detailed stamped image, and I'll just go through and ink up and stamp down all of the images onto my stark white cardstock. All right, now once all those images are stamped, because this is a pigment ink, you want to set it in place because it takes a long time to dry. So I like just going in with a little bit of clear heat embossing powder, tapping off the excess, and then I'll heat set this until it's clear and shiny. And that perfectly seals in that black ink and gives it a nice glossy finish to the images. All right, then I'm gonna go in with some Simon Hurley Create ink pads and just smoosh them down onto my craft sheet in the colors that I want to use to color these images in. And this is going to create kind of a watercolor palette that I'm able to pick the colors up from and do my watercoloring. So I love that you can stamp, blend, and watercolor with these inks, which allows for tons of versatility when you're crafting with them. All right, then when you're watercoloring on Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock, I always like to just wet the cardstock first with a layer of water to get it ready to take any of the color. Then I'm gonna go in with my inks and a little bit of water and start doing my watercoloring. And because we've already wet the cardstock, it helps the inks blend smoother and seamlessly onto the surface without just sinking right into the cardstock. Then once you've done that wash of color, you can go in with an even darker color or that same color and less water and do a little bit of shading. For this planet, again, I'll go in with a little bit of water, and then I'll bring in a wash of kind of a light pink color, and we'll go over top with a darker purple to add in a little bit of shading and dimension. For the asteroid, I'll go in with a little bit of Gur, which is this nice dark brown color. And with the flame, I'll bring in Guppy at the bottom, which is nice orange, and then I'll bring in a little bit of yellow right at the top. For the astronaut, I'm going to do a wash of Woof all over, which is this gray color. And then I'll add some shading by going back in with Woof and a little bit less water and just add some darker areas with that color. Then for some of the accents, I'm gonna go in with a little bit of bee sting and add those in. This will give a nice pop of red to some of the details of the image. Now I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Astro Paste on some of these planets to give them a little bit of glitter and shine to them too. So I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Crown Me onto this planet and add just a little bit of purple shine by just tapping on a light layer of the Astro Paste. And again, that gives it just a little bit of that glittery shine when you tilt it in the light, but it doesn't take over the color underneath. If you wanna get into more of a detailed area, you can definitely try using a brush. Here I'm gonna go in with a brush and some Fool's Gold, and I'll go over the layer of that flame with some of that beautiful Fool's Gold glitter. This will give it tons of gorgeous shine, and you're able to get more into the details than you would be able to with your finger. And that gives you just as much gorgeous shine. I absolutely love that too. Now just make sure when you're using a brush that you clean it out super thoroughly, because you don't want any of that glitter or paste base stuck in that brush, because it will make it dry and unusable. Lastly, we'll go in with a little bit of Clear Skies Astro Paste, and we'll use that on this blue planet. Just adding a little bit of glitter to just about everything. I'm obsessed with adding a little bit of glitter from Astro Paste by just tapping it onto things. It doesn't take away from the image, but it just adds a little bit of glitter that doesn't come off on your hands. All right, then I'll go in and grab the coordinating dies that go along with the images that I used. And all you need to do is look above the images and make sure that they're lined up with an even white border all the way around. And then you'll go in and use a little bit of mint tape or low tack masking tape to hold the dies in place while you run it through your die cutting machine. All right, once everything is taped into place, I'm gonna grab my Platinum Scout. This is my little mini black die cutting machine that I made with spellbinders that pretty much just sits on my desk. So I'll place in that platform, and it's wide enough to fit this right through and cut these images all out. And then I'll place my gray cutting plate on top, and we'll run it right through the die cutting machine. I think before we get started, we might need to put this down and awkwardly stare at each other as we run it right through. And it's super easy to do with this little Scout machine. This thing is perfect for die cutting. All right. Now let's check out the results. These images cut out perfectly. They just pop right out of here super easily. And I love that with these little star ones over here, they actually cut out right in between those two, which you totally couldn't do without a scissors. But I'm obsessed with coordinating dies because it cuts these out so much easier than I would be able to by hand with a nice even white border all the way around. Now let's put this card all together. So I'm starting off with one of the pre-cut and scored Simon Hurley card bases. This is the top folding version. There's also a side folding version available. And I love this because you're not taking any time away from your card making to fold and cut a card base. It's already done for you, and it's stark white cardstock, so it's nice and thick and super bright white. All right, let me chop this down a little bit on either side of the card so we can have a border on each side. Then I'm going to use some tape runner to mount my galaxy background down onto some black cardstock so I can have a little bit of a black border on each side to give it a nice finishing look. And then we'll add this right down onto our top folding card base. I always start at the top of the card base just to align things, and then it should align up on both sides evenly across your card. For this little guy, I want him front and center on my card, but I want him to wobble around and be kind of interactive. So I'm using one of these little mini action wobblers, which fits perfectly on the back of this little guy. And I'll stick that right down. And then we'll stick that clear base right front and center onto our cardstock there. And that makes this guy stand up nicely, and it also wiggles on your card, really fun. But what I like so much about this is that it's this spring, so it flattens down into your envelope, so it's easy for mailing. And then once you open the card, it pops back up and gives you tons of fun interactivity. All right, then I'm gonna take a little bit of liquid glue to glue down these stars flat onto the card around that little astronaut. And then I'll take all the sort of planet images and add those up on some foam tape to pop them up off the card a little bit easier. So it sort of looks like the solar system is kind of surrounding the little astronaut. I think it's a super fun and playful design for the card, and I absolutely love how it looks. For the sentiment, I'm gonna stamp it down using a little bit of Versamark clear sticky ink and stamp it onto some black cardstock. And I'll sprinkle over some white heat embossing powder, which is going to stand up perfectly against that black cardstock. And we'll heat set this until it's nice and bright white. And we'll fussy cut that out with some scissors, and for some reason, I can't find my small Fisker scissors, so I'm cutting it out with these ginormous shears, but I highly recommend a much smaller pair for detail work like this. Let's see if I can do this. You could leave it on just a little rectangle too, but I like to cut right around it because I think it gives it more of kind of a finished look for your card. Finish it off with the sentiment down below, and here is a look at that finished card. That galaxy background blended with all of the different layers of stars really is so beautiful and brings the design to life. And then finishing it off with the different watercolored images from the Space Friends stamp set, and all of that gorgeous Astro paste to add tons of shine is so beautiful. And the fact that the astronaut even moves on the front just adds to how fun and playful this galaxy card is. Next, let's create a fun card using the planetary stamp set and some perfect pearls to add some really beautiful shine to the images. Perfect pearls really makes these stand out on black cardstock beautifully, and I'm excited to show you this technique. So for starters, you're going to want to stamp your images. You can either stamp one image or the whole background, and in this instance, I want to do the whole background. So I'm just going to take these images off the stamp sheet. You could just use them right on the stamp sheet like this, but I want to kind of place them around the card a little bit more. So I'm just going to take these images and start setting them all over the card project. Super easy and fun to do, and kind of create your own background of planets. And I'll just fill that background in. Then I'll go in with my large Simon Hurley Create Acrylic Black. Again, this is really where they come in handy when you want to do something quite a bit larger, and I'll pick all of those images up. Now for this, I'm going to use black cardstock because I want the images to really stand out and pop using those perfect pearls. But you can use whatever color cardstock you want. I find that the darker colored cardstocks work really beautiful for this, but you could just use white colored cardstock if you want to. Then I'm going to go in with a clear sticky ink. You could use Perfect Medium or Versamark ink. Anything is going to work for this. You just want a really nice sticky ink that's going to grab onto these perfect pearls. So I'll just go in and ink up all of the planets on my acrylic black with this ink. Then I'm going to go in and line this up with our card, and once we have it in place, I'm just going to stamp it right down, giving it some good pressure to make sure that all those images transfer beautifully. And red rubber does a great job at transferring. If you tilt it in the light, you can kind of see some of those planets coming through here. All right, now you want to protect your work surface when you do this next part. I usually like to put a piece of paper down, but I'm going to do this little plastic bin so there's little walls here too while I do the technique. But I recommend like a piece of 12 by 12 cardstock just to protect your surface from all the perfect pearls. Then we can bring our perfect pearls in. Now there is tons of colors of perfect pearl. Lots and lots to choose from. I'm gonna choose the confetti white. We'll use a little bit of turquoise. Let's see, I like grape fizz. We'll do some of the perfect gold. pink gumball, and let's do perfect copper too. And then I'll go in and use a little detail brush like this, and I'm just going to go in and start kind of adding some of these colors down. Now I'm going to sort of tilt this up in the light so that I can see where this is. But of course, if you're working at home, you can sort of get your head over it and see some of those details. And I'll just add in some of the colors all over these planets. Now you have the choice here to do the whole background in one color or to kind of spot treat it like this and paint in some different colors for each one of the planets. Here I'm doing different colors, but like I said, if you want the full background, all one color, totally feel free to do so. That's gonna look awesome as well. But I want a mix of these blues, yellows, golds, and whites all together. And a really little bit goes a long way. I'm just taking a tiny little bit on my brush and then bringing it in onto the surface. And then lastly, we'll bring in a little bit of that white color all over as well. All right, now I've hit all the planets with a little bit of that pearl, and then I'm just going to close these off and seal them before we do any of the next steps. All right, now this next step is really important, and I don't know if it's something that everybody recommends, but I highly do when you're using these perfect pearls. So I'm gonna go in with this kind of medium-sized brush from Ranger. This is a brush that I absolutely destroy, but you kind of want to for this technique to make sure that it all works. I go in with the perfect pearls and I just make sure that every area was hit by literally stippling this brush into the high heavens and really pressing all that perfect pearl into the Versamark or clear sticky ink. If you don't want to do this step, you don't have to, but I find that I've had like them stick much better by doing this. So just go around and wipe the perfect pearls all over. Now don't worry about it looking a little foggy right now. It's just because we're moving all that perfect pearl and mixing it together. But wherever that color first hit, that's gonna be the color that stays on the surface. Now another really important step is using a fan brush like this. This one's from Nuvo from Tonic. I don't think they still sell this one, but I'll link to something that I can find similar down below. But I love a sweeping fan brush because you're going to literally take this and just start sweeping all that perfect pearl off the surface. This is another step that I never miss in the process. You want to really work that perfect pearl off the surface because sometimes it'll want to stick to that black cardstock where you don't want it to. So by using a fan brush and really pressing down in there and just roughly wiping everything off, it's going to really help get rid of any of that excess powder. And then you're left with this really great shiny metallic background that looks absolutely stunning. All right, now to finish this off, you're gonna take a little bit of water, and Perfect Pearls has a built-in binder that activates when you add a little bit of water to it. So all you need to do is just lightly mist over top of it. I'm gonna spray about 4 or 5 times, just a gentle mist over top of the surface. It might lose some of its shine for the time being, but once this dries, it'll be nice and set in place with those perfect pearls. Once it's completed, it looks absolutely beautiful. I love all the different colors that we did these planets in with those perfect pearls. And then all you need to do is add it to a finished card. Here I used a couple fewer colors, just some of the more metallic perfect pearls colors, and that looks absolutely stunning. And then I even watered down a little bit of Lunar paste and flicked it on for a little bit of kind of a mixed media look, and used a sentiment from the Space Friend stamp set to finish it off. I love using these stamps with perfect pearls. It really makes them shine against that black cardstock and look absolutely beautiful when stamped out. I think you guys definitely need to try this. I know most of you guys probably have perfect pearls. It's a pretty old crafting medium that maybe you forget to bring out, but definitely get them out and try them with these stamps because they look absolutely stunning. Before I go, I want to share even more projects and inspiration that I created using this release. So I used the planetary stamp set again, kind of filling out a background with all the different stamps, and I just stamped them with rainbow colors of my Simon Hurley inks. You can see all the beautiful detail that I was able to get just by stamping it out and not coloring it. And then I did just a light blend of color over top of it to just fill in the background even more, and just added a sentiment on top of it. I think this is a gorgeous card, really easy to do, but it brings in lots of color with all those planet stamps. On this card, I wanted to go for tons of texture. Here I used the Placer embossing folder from Spellbinders. This one adds so much texture and dimension and makes it look like you just added plaster all over. I thought it looked kind of like the moon here, and then I added a bunch of different galaxy colors using some solar paste and astro paste on top in all different colors to add glitter and shine to that background. Then I finished that off by chopping it off in half to give it kind of contrast from the black background, and added some stamps from the Space Friend stamp set. Here's the rocket ship, and then I used the sentiment that says shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars, which I think is so inspiring and fun, and I love how this one turned out with all those pastes. Here I was having tons of fun with the cat astronaut images, so I went in with the star background from the planetary stamp, stamped it twice with heat embossing, and then I did some ink blending to create kind of a galaxy background. And then of course I went in with the Space Friend stamps and did those cats, and I even added a little bit of solar paste in that blue color with just my finger to add a little bit of shine to their astronaut helmets when you tilt in the light, which I think is such a fun touch. And then I used the sentiment, "I love you to the moon and back." And for the last card, I wanted to create a fun scene of this little dog getting abducted. So I put the dog little astronaut on a hill at the bottom here. I ink blended a little bit of yellow ink, and then I added a little bit of gold to it with the Astro Paste by just tapping it onto the surface. That way when you tilt it in the light, you see tons of shine there. Then for the background, I used that same Starry Night stencil from Spellbinders and just moved it around with some silver lining Lunar paste, but you could also use the silver lining Astro Paste there. And then all the images are from the Space Friend stamp set with that adorable dog. Again, I used a little bit of solar paste on his helmet there. And then that little UFO I laid right on top of this so it makes it look like he's getting abducted, which I think is so much fun and so funny to use the dog like that. Alright everyone, that's all I have to share with this awesome space themed release. Thank you so much for stopping by for today's video and taking the time to spend crafting with me. Leave me a comment down below letting me know which product or card was your favorite from today's video. I always love chatting with you guys down there. And also remember, down below is a full supplies list with all of the links to the supplies that I used, and using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you soon for another card making and crafting video.